Let's now start with our guest, Ruben. He's the founder of Springest. If you don't know the startup, it's based in Amsterdam, was founded 7 years ago, and has been running on Holacracy since more than 3 years. And since then they have won awards awards for best employer. If you visit Ruben's LinkedIn profile, it's full of enthusiastic employee reviews. And he's also a GTD pro, usability expert, mentors startups, I read. And most importantly, he gives presentations about transforming organizations and his experience with Holacracy. And that's what I'm looking forward to hear now from Ruben. Thanks for coming.
So first of all, Sebastian Hisuk, thank you very much for inviting me. Also for Ecosia to host this very big and wonderful meetup. I love the space here and I love that it's packed of people hopefully enthusiastic. I certainly am. This is how we start every day at Springest actually, with a little stand-up where we first check in and sort of say how we feel. So I'll do that now and then you won't have to, so that's fine. I feel quite excited, a little bit tired, but I drank some mate, so I'm fired up now. And I hope to share with you some of the things I've learned. I won't go too deep into, let's say, practical matters, but I do want to sort of show the challenges I've seen in my company, and I've also heard from others. Sebastian said I mentor some other startups, I speak a little bit about this topic. And just so you know, this is not my sort of profession or anything. Springest is my main thing, and I happen to have a role in my company that's called evangelist. So I'll also put it on here. And I like to evangelize a little bit on how we work, because I think it's valuable. I think it's more the future than the past, and I think more people in organizations should be like that. So I like sort of evangelizing that. And with that, I'll go on. Here's part of my team. We've grown since the picture. We are with about 26 people now, adding 1 or 2 per month in the coming months, I think. And what I want to talk about is the reality of self-organization. So not just, the book, like you've heard last time maybe, some of you, Frédéric Laloux, great book, Reinventing Organizations, sort of sketching where society went, how organizations are developing. But I want to talk about what if you actually do that? What's the hard part, or what's the thing you shouldn't do or should do? And about questions, I love questions. We should do them definitely at the end, but I do like it if you ask clarifying questions during the presentation. So if you hear me say something that really makes no sense, or you're really curious, like, what does it really mean, then do ask, please, because otherwise, I might lose you. And it's a bit dark out there and light here, and I go fast, so, jump in if you have a clarifying question. So with that, let's take it off. Yesterday I was in Lisbon, talking to people who are here in the bell curve of adopting new things, new technologies or new organizational technologies. I think you are here, you have to be very aware of that. You might not all have adopted Holacracy or a certain system yet, but you are so interested that you will spend your night at a funny startup here and listen to some guy coming from Amsterdam. It's very early still, and nobody's in the majority. There is no majority yet. Holacracy and self-organization is all still very early. You might think, hey, my startup or my company wants to organize differently, and there's many examples. And I met some guy, Angel Medellina, he sketched this and he nicely put Springest there, but I don't consider ourselves on the same level yet. But it's awesome, we are on the slide, so it's proof, great. You might think, hey, I want to organize like that as well. With this I want to say, it's not about per se how we do it, or how they do it. It's not about Holacracy, or the Spotify way, or what Zappos does. But it's about finding new ways. And that's something important to also take away tonight if you talk to others, or maybe you go back into your own company and people are asking you and challenging you. We're still at the beginning, and I looked up this image of Linux distributions, and Linux itself was already based on Unix, and well, it is an operating system, and Holacracy is an operating system for organizations. So we are now sort of here, Holacracy might be the first open source sort of standard in-a-box distribution of a form of self-management. And from here it goes like this, I think. And Springest is now maybe somewhere here, you know, we forked it a little bit as well. We haven't officially made a fork of the open source constitution. There is a constitution in Holacracy. But we certainly adopted the way we run versus how another Holacracy might run. And you have to realize this, so not everything I say or we do is the way you'll do it. You will find your own ways, and you will have your distribution here, and you might adopt the distribution of his company, and you might take his as your starting point and then change it yourself. I think that's very important to realize on where we are right now. Sometimes people ask me, can this be done? You know, can we change the world? Or, you know, how long will this take? And can every company do it? And I think, you know, maybe Henry Ford was the first to introduce some kind of mass production and a system around that, and we took about 100 years to sort of evolve this traditional hierarchical management structure. And it's pretty good right now, you know, it works. The whole world runs on it basically. So something's good in that. And let's say we are now a few years in that mode of finding something new. It will take a while. So don't worry if you feel early, you are early. And that's nice. So what I'll talk about, not so much about where does this come from or about why is this important. I think the fact that you are here shows why this is important. You already know that. A bit more on the what, but also not too much, just to set the stage. I do want to talk a little bit on the why, because this motivates a lot of what happens afterwards. I also want to tell a bit about my why. And then a lot of about really how, what, you know, how does it really work, all that stuff. On the right, by the way, is Henkie. It's a Dutch name, it's our mascot. And Henkie is growing, as you see, we've tried to put that into a cartoon. He's growing because of Springest. And to give some context, Sebastian already told a little bit about it. We want to be the Amazon of learning. That's why the Amazon is here, and this is our purpose, our mission. In Holacracy, for every role and every circle, every team, you define a purpose as well, and this is ours. Everybody learns through Springest, the learnest company of all. And what's most important about that is the second part, or actually today. We don't just have one mission where we want to do something in the world. Like the first part is about the economic value or the value we add to the world, but the second part is about how do you want to do that. And it took me a few years to realize that is just as much part of our purpose. And I think it should be for your companies as well. Otherwise there will be too many moments where you will sacrifice one for the other. And so we decided to put it in purpose explicitly and also, you know, do things like this. I'm here not because this helps, well, maybe as well, you know, you might use Springest once, twice, but mostly because of this. I want to be known as the learnest company of them all. A company that's a learning organization that constantly adapts, that grows by itself, etc. What we do, we are a comparison site, so here you see the Dutch side. You just filter, search, review education courses, e-learning, all the way up to full MBAs, anything you want to learn. And then we do that inside of companies as well, so an insurance company, a bank, energy company, also in Germany, they use our system internally. And the one thing I would like to add, and then that's it about my company, is that we want to help organizations become learning organizations as well. So our mission fits with that as well. I think part of a learning organization is that people have the freedom to, you know, make decisions, to take leaps, to develop themselves in whatever direction they want. Hopefully in a direction that helps the company. So we also sell a system that does that, and that helps a lot as well. I was talking to someone before we started, she's from an IT company, and it really helps if your sort of what you show to the outside connects with, you know, what you do on the inside. You have to find that link, and it took us, I think, 4 years before we realized that there was a pretty logical link. I think that really helps, sort of to keep up with it. So does it work? Sebastian told you already a bit. After this one I'll come back to you. We were voted Employer of the Year twice in a row. Very happy with that. So the second time there was a lot more competition. It was for, let's say, smaller companies. We won that twice in a row, partly because of the self-organization. We are in the top 100 of exponential organizations. Number 1 is Airbnb, I think. 2 is Uber, 3 is GitHub, and then 45 is Springest. So yay! we're not that size yet, but we're getting there. We're on the beginning of the hockey stick, maybe. We'll see. But it's because of the way we're organized, because of the sector we're in. And the most fun award is the Employee Recognition Award. We are a very transparent, data-driven, sometimes even aggressive company to each other, very critical. But we won this award because out of there, I think 9,000 customers, we gave each other the most compliments. And I found it very cute actually, because you wouldn't say that if you saw us, I think. But still, we are very complimentary as well. Clarifying question in the back?
Yeah. Hi. You said you're helping organizations to run better, or are you helping organizations to find a purpose?
No, it's mostly about helping them help their employees to learn, and by that becoming, hopefully, learning organizations. That's the software we use. So, I just want to hear one or two. What's your why? Why are you here? And it's not enough if you say, I'm interested in the topic, or I liked it, or so, you know, why? Ask yourself why 3 times, and then why is it? Someone, just shout. Why are you here? Otherwise, I'm going away. Yeah.
I want to know how to make groups and organizations effective and get to their purpose in a humane and nice way.
Okay, very nicely put. That could be a purpose in itself. Great. One other one. Why are you here? Yeah.
Yeah, I just read the book Reinventing Organizations, and I just tried to implement this for our company. And so I'm soaking up everything that I can learn.
Cool.
Especially also failures. If you have some failures and challenges, that would be good.
Full of it. But why is that? Why are you interested? Why are you reading the book in the first place? Why do you want to know?
Well, a friend of mine recommended it to me, and to me it brings together, I don't know, let's just say a certain level of personal consciousness together with consciousness in organizations, and I've been looking for something like this for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really know what I was looking for,
Mm-hmm.
and when a friend of mine recommended this book to me, and I read it, and I thought, well, that's exactly
This might be it.
This might be exactly it.
I like it. Well, consciousness is a very important word for me personally, and also for the way I hope Springest works. Because if not that, then you know what is there? Just mindless, you know, going through your life. That's the worst thing, right? So consciousness on a personal level, where you actively choose what you do, and hopefully are happy with that, but also on an organizational level, where choices are made based on reality, on data, hopefully, conscious, critical, stuff like that. That's very important for me personally as well. I'll move on. Sorry. Yeah, clarifying?
Why was there Arnold Schwarzenegger on the slide?
This is interesting, because the clarifying question would be, who is that guy? This is further. He's on the slide. And now who is this? I mean, that's the real question. Arnie is on there because that's my slide when you get to exercise, when you get to do something. And also because Matt, hopefully you'll see this later on the video, Matt is a German colleague of mine. He's a fan of Arnold Schwarzenegger. And in a way I am too. I don't agree with all of the things he says, but he's a hard worker, he's very open and candid, so he's sort of a mascot in my company as well. So that's why he's So these two people are me and my small sister. Well, I was also pretty small then. And this is my why. Not her or me or whatever. But my father, we were both born much too early, and she was even earlier. But we both survived. We were in, I don't know what you call them, one of those glass boxes to keep us alive for a while. That all worked out, and my dad at some point wrote me a letter in which he explained he never really worried about me. You know, all was going to be fine, and he was proud of me, and you know, all that. But one thing, and when I was born, he drew this small painting of a Taurus, of a bull, which is my my astronomical sign as well, astrological sign as well. And I identify with that as well, because he's strong charging, you can trust on him, he's, you know, sturdy. I like to be that as well. And my dad in the letter wrote the one thing he was worried about, like, are you using your potential? And when I grew older, let's say 22, 3, 4, something like that, when you finally sort of grow up, right? It took a while for me. I realized this is my main question. Is my potential used? And if it's not used, I feel shitty. I started to recognize situations where I felt shitty. And at some point I stopped studying because my potential was just wasted. And then I started another company, and I started to feel like, okay, now, you know, the world is getting something from me. That might sound a bit grandiose or something, but for me that was my drive. And actually in my company as well, we have a lot of smart people, but if I feel someone's potential isn't used, I really get annoyed. If I feel we are building the wrong things, then we are not using the potential of our really good developers. And that really annoys me, really makes my skin crawl. So that's my purpose, and that's why I choose this Holacracy thing, that's why I'm here. I'm trying to use all the potential I have to do something, you know, do something with it, make it of use. So that's my drive. And I think yours might be connected to this. I've heard it already a few times, intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. And I think Holacracy and other self-management systems might be a very good way to, you know, do this instead of this. You know, not go for the title, not for the bonus, not for the salary, not for the career between quotes, but go for the passion, go for what you like, go for learning, etc. And I think these systems that are now emerging, as you saw on the Linux slide, all those systems, they strive for this. I'll share the presentation later. Always a bit sad when you see someone do like this and then, oh, sorry, it's gone. I think for most of the smaller companies, and I know many of you run or work at startups, it's more like this. Like, we already have that intrinsic motivation. It's more about not losing it. And maybe beyond that, it's more about growing and structuring so that you can still keep this intrinsic motivation, but also, you know, go towards some kind of goal. So you don't want to become an oil tanker, like your competitors might be, or like the companies you want to kill might be. Of course we don't want to be an oil tanker, but if you want to put all that oil or all those people in boats, you'll have a lot of boats that are going in all these different directions. And I'd say up to 10 people, that's fine. You know, they'll all talk to each other. The founder or founders might be very, you know, on it all the time. Management at the lunch table, I sometimes call it. That works fine. But I say above 10 people, then, you know, I also started to feel it. Like, there has to be some structure. We can be all these speedboats and go really fast with everybody steering their own, or their small team maybe. But we have one goal. We have this purpose. We want to achieve something in the world. I'm not doing Springest because, you know, because it's fun to run a company or something. That's not the reason it's there. I could run any company, but I chose to run that company, or I chose to found that company. And that's because I want, you know, to achieve a goal, and to that goal we need some structure so that all the speedboats are going in the same direction. And this is an important lesson here. It's not about, you know, just having freedom, just doing whatever the hell you want. No, not at all. I'll get back to that later. So, a few elements of Holacracy then. Again, it's not about Holacracy per se, but it might be a good one to start off with. I won't go too deep into it, because I think that's not what this night is about. I want to go sort of beyond the challenges. You can read books about it if you want to know the details, but this is how I view the system, to give you an idea if you don't know. There are a lot of rules. There is a constitution that everybody has to adhere to. Hopefully the founder or CEO actually signs the thing. I did. It's on the wall at Springest. It says, I hereby, I don't know what the English translation would be, but sort of grant the authority that I now have, I grant it to the system. I am not in charge, the system is in charge now, and whatever processes are developed in the system. There are a lot of duties that you have to do, duties that have a lot to do with transparency. You know, if you get freedom, you'll also have to adhere to these rules and give transparency, not just sort of receive it. And there are elections, for instance, for certain roles. So those are some types of rules. Then you have two kinds of meetings that are very structured. A tactical meeting, which is about the work, about projects, about metrics, about tasks. And then you have a governance meeting, which is about the organizational changes. Like what roles do we have, what circles are there, what accountabilities are there, etc. So that's a part of the structure. There can be other meetings, by the way. You know, it doesn't say you can only have these meetings. But these two are really needed to go on with this system. Then you have circles. Circles usually have a strategy. So here's some of the hierarchical structure. There's a strategy that the circle, you know, wants to adhere to get closer to a purpose or closer to the strategy maybe of the circle above the circle. So there's a hierarchy in the purpose there. And then within the circle you have roles, and roles have accountabilities, and you know, they might have a domain, they usually have a purpose. The domain is something that it controls. So there's all kinds of checks and balances and mechanisms in the system, and it's pretty complicated actually. Just like a normal company. Yeah.
The strategy, you added it in your system, or do you think in Holacracy it's...
No, strategy is very much a part of Holacracy, but it's very vague. It's defined as a circle can have a strategy set by its lead link. That's pretty much all there is about strategy in Holacracy, and we adopted it on top of that to mean strategy has to be defined as OKR, objectives and key results, which is a method very popular in Silicon Valley. I think also in Berlin among startups. Just some hands, who has heard of objectives and key results, OKRs? Like 20 people, 30 people probably. So this is an example of our, let's say, our distribution. We took Holacracy, we thought strategy has to be more concrete, and we implemented a different method inside of it. Works very well for us. So we use OKRs. So, sort of the system. FUD. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. That's something that's in American politics very well known as a mechanism. Works very well, as you see right now. It's all about those three. I want you to think, not out loud, but to yourself, like, which ones do you have? And I want to talk about a few of them, and I think we can revisit some of them at the end of the presentation. I have to say, I didn't have many when I started with Holacracy because I accepted them. And then you don't have to care that much about them. It was more like, well, let's see what happens. And so we did. I'll talk a bit about it later, how we did that. And so the phases in adopting a system like this. I think from what I've seen, it very often goes a bit like this. When you start, you say, hey, we know this is a bit like we run. No, we have roles, they're very fluid. People choose projects. We have a purpose maybe. We're already doing this, it's not so complicated. Which is awesome because then you have something to sort of work with, relate to. But then, you know, when you start to learn, the second phase starts, and might be 3 months, might be 4 or 5 months, really something like that. And then you start to understand the system and say, okay, yeah, it's not really what we're doing. What we were doing was related to it, but now it's all very structured. Now we really see all the rules and how they are interwoven. And then you also realize it's not for everyone. Like at first you think, oh, we can do this, but then in the second phase some people start to drop out because they don't want to deal with it or they can't. I think don't want to is the better description because I think everybody can. So it might be a question you have, is this for everyone? Yeah, I think so. But it might take some adjustment, and for some people more than for others. If you really want to know what your career will look like in 3 years, then this system will be hard on you because it depends on what you do. So, and then if you don't do something, then you won't get there. This is a bit different in large corporations often. It's more a matter of just following the steps and not slipping, and then you will get there. If that is very important to you, then you might fall in this category. So that's after a few months, just how it might go. Then you really start to get it, and then the expectation rises. Because then you've gone through the first, let's say, bumps, made some adjustments, learned something, fired some people, let some people go by themselves. We did those things, all of them. And then we start to really understand, like, wow, this is cool. If we would only understand this thing really, that's after 8 months or 9 months, like, wow, now we really get it. Now we have to learn. It's a lot like learning a sport or a new game. Like, you know, knowing the rules of the game doesn't make you good at all at playing it. Maybe from that point it becomes fun. The game is certainly not fun before you know the rules. That's the shittiest thing. Like, you know the rules, I don't. You will win every time, I don't know why. This is this phase. You are in this phase for quite a while. Where you think, I'm losing, and I'm not sure why, I'm not even sure what the game is. You know, it looks like what we did, but, you know, it doesn't work. So let's say after 8-9 months you really start to get it, and then your expectation rises and you get better, and then this phase of mastering starts. Which is a bit like sports or like martial arts. We had a Holacracy coach, still have him by the way. He also wrote a good book, it's called Getting Teams Done, almost out in English. So it's getting things done, but then for teams, based on Holacracy. He does Kung Fu, really on high level, so he goes to Thailand for all kinds of, I don't know, Kung Fu certifications in monasteries and stuff like that. And he said, you know, your horizon moves, your goal moves. You know you are at 80%, and then you want to get to an even higher level of consciousness, to a higher level of feeling and processing tensions to improve the organization. And then you know, once you realize that, you're back at 60% again. And it goes on like that. Also for Springest, I think we are really getting pretty good at this thing. But you know, we're growing as well, so we're constantly adjusting and readjusting the horizon, and therefore how far we think we are. And then you start to learn again. So that might be your adoption. Might be fun to watch this, we won't now. Afterwards in the Q&A I can show you something, but this is on YouTube. It's a Holacracy tactical meeting that we've done, I don't know, a year and a half ago? May, yeah, a bit longer ago. We will do this again, I think, and also you can always visit us. Every Tuesday we have our alignment circle meeting, which is sort of the old management team, but it's bigger now. And there can always be 3 guests. We call it a Holacracy safari. You can go on safari and you sit on the second sort of row and you view all these funny Holacracy people doing their thing. So you can always come by in Amsterdam. You can subscribe on Springest. Actually, it costs 50 euros, and we buy fun things for the office from them because it's very popular. We can have discounts for startups if you want. So view the meeting online, then you can get some more of an idea. And also something that we could dive into later, or you can always ask me questions, is how we use Asana. It's a project management system, task management system, and we've adopted a lot of things to make it work in Holacracy. So all of our Holacracy things are in here. And what you see here is one circle, it's called alignment. So here you see the roles in alignment. And the roles that are actually circles have this yin-yang symbol. And that's one of the tricks we did. We employed 50 of those tricks to make Asana work with Holacracy for us. And just the one thing that I want to share about it now is that everything is in there. Like there's metrics in there, there's roles in there, projects, tasks, discussions. And that's it's a very big thing, very powerful thing to sort of ensure that everyone is in the same system, even higher. Because it's all clear. We all learn from each other, we get the same tricks, there's full transparency, everybody's getting things done is also in here, we all do GTD, we all got courses in that, we have coaches for that internally, it's all in there. And just as a tip, you know, whatever you do, pick a system, really master it, teach others, coach it, you know, do that because it saves you so much stuff. And don't accept people that say, yeah, I know, but I do it a bit differently because it's really better for me. But you know, it's not about you. It's about the company and our purpose, and we want to go somewhere, so please stick to the system. Something we did that really helped. I want to list a few challenges. Yeah, sorry.
You're still using Glassfrog? Or
No, we.
Everything's in Asana?
Yeah, Glassfrog is a system from Holacracy One, the organization that holds the trademark. And Glassfrog, when we started using it, was still very not grown up. Now it's a lot better, actually. I know from others. But after half a year, we learned Holacracy. We were pretty good, and then we moved into Asana, basically. So this is an article I read on. I wrote on Medium. I write sometimes about my Holacracy experience there, so you can read it there. Comment, share, whatever. I love that. I also will reply, and if you have other questions, just do it there as well. But I want to share some of the challenges that might inspire you to maybe overcome them or skip them. A big one is Holacracy, and I think any other system won't tell you how to run your organization. You know, you'll still have to plug your own organization in there. It's just a framework, like Linux or like iOS. It doesn't tell you what apps to run. It doesn't tell you how to use your iPhone. But it's really handy if you want to, you know, do stuff with it. So if you are a startup founder especially, don't expect this Holacracy system to magically fix all your management problems. You know, you still have to put all kinds of stuff in there. It's only structure where you have to put what you have to use for something. So you have to use the processes to create, and I've struck that? No. Striped? Well, it's in strike through now. You don't create clarity, it evolves. This is a very big part of Holacracy. You don't sort of design it, it evolves itself. But you have to play by the rules in the system to, you know, to fill the system. So don't expect it to sort of magically fix all your problems. You just have to have a big tool set to fix all your problems. And then you have to use the tool set. So that's a big challenge. And then the other way around, in some aspects it does, because there are many things you can't do anymore. You know, if you see something is broken, a certain process, you can just run after a person and say, hey, you have to do it like this because it sucks. Well, that you can't do anymore. So some things are in the Constitution and you cannot do them anymore. So for that, the fix is the same. Play the game. And as a founder or as an early adopter in your company, you know, you better get good at the game first. Because otherwise you will lose again. And that really sucks. You know, and people will ask you like, so how does it work? And you're like, oh, I'm not so sure. And then they'll feel like, you know, if you don't even know. So you really have to play the game. And we did this too late. I think we did pretty well with training. We started with a full training for everyone, and we got coaching. And Dietrich was there really like two blocks of 2 or 3 hours a week, observing us, feedbacking us, etc. And still it wasn't enough. And we really had to push harder for the learning in the first 3 to 6 months especially. When people started to get it, but not quite, you know, that's when you have to push through and really play the game. And really learn how to solve your tensions, how to solve the improvements you want to do. So that's a big challenge at least. Wait, I'm wrong here. Politics and gossip will still happen. People are people, so they will, you know, bitch at you or bitch at each other, or, you know, find problems where there are none or whatever. And this will still happen, and it's fine. It's also a human need. So the fix for it is to try to make everything about the roles. Roles are defined in Holacracy by the system, and you, especially as a founder or the early adopter, you have to be very clear in that. Like, I'm not saying this to you, Peter, or to you, Julia. I'm saying this to the role, blah, blah, blah. And oh, it happens that you have the role. And if you try to distance yourself, you know, the person from the work, then it starts to work. Then people will feel less sort of harmed or whatever, called out or sought out or whatever you want to call it. We actually, in almost every tactical meeting, you know, a meeting that's really about the work and the progress of projects and metrics, there's always some very brutal call-outs of someone who will, you know, raise attention and say, yeah, this metric is very weird. You said it was okay, but if I look at the year over year, it's really not okay. What's up with that? They'll be like, well, what the fuck, it's my metric, you know, it's my work. That's a pretty harsh thing to say. And there will be no emotional response. Not because we are robots, it would be nice maybe sometimes, but no. It's because we will just not feel offended. Just think about the question, think about the answer, maybe say, I don't know, let's create the next action for the role, blah, 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 to figure out what's up with metric, blah, blah, blah. And report on it on Slack with an answer. Very clear. This happens a lot in our tech. So the gossip and the feelings will still be there, but if you start to separate the work from the people, then it starts to work. Hard thing to do, but if you get the hang of it, you start to really feel easy about it. And then, yeah, I said it a few times already, you will lose if you don't learn the rules. So it's really, unfortunately, about the Constitution, and there's a better version now. I should change the graphic, I realize now. That like they used to have this very legal document and then next to it the translation that was actually readable, but now it's all in a pretty readable format. It takes you about an hour to read the whole damn thing, but that's definitely worth it. And to revisit it every now and then. And you know, if you have Slack or another communication tool, to link to it every now and then, say, oh, I actually looked it up. It is actually like this. You know, be very open about those rules and the fact that we're all figuring them out. You have to do that. Management. That's of course what everybody is like, yeah, we killed management, so now there's no management anymore. But some things will still smell like management. If I might ask you, hey, can you do this project? And you might feel like I'm managing you. Which is not the case because, you know, I can request a project. It's only up to you if you want to do it. But I can still request a project. Actually, it's a rule in Holacracy, one of the duties. You cannot refuse a project if it is connected to your accountabilities. Because you are accountable for it, that means it can be expected of you. You cannot refuse it. However, you can choose to not do it now. But you will have to do it at some point. So I could say, I'll elaborate a bit on it, because it's a fun bit of info. I can say, okay, oh, you don't want to do it now. When do you expect it to be done? And you will have to give an estimate. You can't say, I have no fucking clue. I don't care about this. No, you have to make an estimate because you said you wouldn't do it now. And you are very conscious because we have this whole system of consciousness and transparency. So what's your best estimate of when you will do this? And you will say, 6 months. And then I can ask, okay, what are you doing in the meantime? Because if you already know it's 6 months from now, apparently you know what you're doing in the meantime. You know, that creates a lot of clarity and discussion, and hopefully not emotional discussion. Works very well, this system. And we are very sort of rough in that, but we all know what it's about. It's about creating clarity. And very often in that process of question and answer, it's clear that maybe you didn't understand my request, or you didn't know why it was important to me, or to my role, or to the strategy we have, or whatever. And that's what this is all about. You know, what do you actually mean by that? Why is it actually important? Why is it more important than the other thing I want to do in 3 months from now? Or whatever it was. And that's what it's all about. So this needs a lot of feedback, especially if someone feels managed. You have to tell the other person, hey, this sounds very managery, or maybe we have to talk about why you feel managed, even though it was just a project request. So you need a lot of feedback, especially towards people that used to be managers. You know, you have to ask it in a certain way. You have to request it. You cannot order it. And if you are ordered, you are very much allowed to say, thank you for your request. I will note it. Good luck with your day, you know. I'll do with it whatever I please. And if they don't ask questions, fine. So management will still be there. You have to fix it. Especially for the founders and the adopters. Yeah, you'll go through the mud. And when it gets tough, you'll have to, you know, be harder on it. And especially clarify why. Clarify the strategy. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing it now? You have to let it bounce back to yourself. If you see that your company isn't adopting it, it's your fault. So apparently they don't get it. And you know, that's a very tough thing of holacracy actually. Much harder than just running your company old school. Because then it's more like, I give you some shit, you don't do the shit, then it's your fault basically, of course, because you didn't do the shit. But now it bounces back very quickly. You know, if you don't do the shit, apparently it's not clear. Because we all trust each other, we all have very clear roles and accountabilities, and all this stuff is there. And if it's still not getting done, probably it wasn't clear. So especially for you guys, the early ones, you have to make it clear. Suck it up. Then beware of the creationists. This I like, this evolution idea. If you want to grow a third eye, because you think it will help you see better, good for you, you can try. In holacracy, it's very hard to stop change. It's very easy to propose change as long as it's grounded in reality. If you have an example of your tension, here is some kind of work that we are not doing, here's what happened, we should do it, it should be an accountability. Great. Whatever your solution is, it will be adopted, it will be tried, because you are the one who feels the tension. So you will propose it, not the lead link, not me, the founder, not whatever. You have the tension, you propose a fix, and the fix will be adopted unless someone has proof that will do harm that cannot be rolled back once the harm is done. So irreparable harm to the organization that is so big that it can be fixed afterwards. And only then, you know, if I don't have proof that your third eye will damage us in a way that we cannot repair, then we'll try. We'll see what happens. So beware of people that say, yeah, this team is not running well. I know what we should do. He should do this, she should do that. This should be the project for the next few months. Blah, blah, blah. You can say, you're being a creationist. You think you're God? You know, can you beat evolution? Can you beat reality-based experiments? Fast iterations? You know, lean, startup, lean, everything around that is about this. Yes?
To clarify, because I didn't get it at all, can you give something concrete, an example where it happens?
Yeah, we used to have 3 product circles for 3 separate parts of our product. Each circle had a few developers and and a product owner and a sort of designer person. What we noticed was that feature requests weren't processed very fast because they were limited on resources. And then at some point someone said, okay, I see this resource problem. I think the solution is, or I think the actual problem is that, you know, they're all doing small things and we don't get the big things done. So I propose to merge those 3 product circles, 3 teams into 1 circle. And that's it, and it just got done. Even though a lot of people had their doubts about it, because they felt good in the circles. We used to have actually one big product circle, so we already knew this. We had this before, but it was a different stage of the company. So there were a lot of objections, but nobody had data that it wouldn't work at this stage, and nobody had proof that it, would do us harm. So the circles were merged, and it actually worked very well, to some people's surprise, and now we have that again. And it can be that it gets split up later, it can be that it gets deleted, that we create a new role for something, and there's very often there's some sort of feeling of discussion, and then people start to think, do I actually know this will happen? Or am I just anticipating this will happen?
Sorry.
First thing, sorry, I'll get back to you.
So just to clarify, this could have been a situation, or may have been a situation, where 90% of the people involved said, well, I really don't think this is going to work, but they could not really come with a case or with a study, and then it's still going to happen.
Yep.
And I really don't want this to happen, it's still going to happen.
Yeah. There's not much room to say I really don't want this. You can have your reaction, the governance process is very clear in that, it's something to read up about, but no, let's be hard, no. But the chance is not very big that you will have a data-based tension with an example that the other people involved will totally disagree with. Usually they disagree, they agree with your problem, they just disagree with your solution. But you proposed it first. So apparently you had some tension with it, so we'll try your solution first. And then next week, or in 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, we can change it again if we want to.
Yeah. So you write the idea of the creationist manager, but it seems like the creationist manager was the hero of this story.
No. He's the creationist, so he's the anti, or the non-hero. That's the thing. You have to let evolution do its thing. And that means sometimes you'll adopt something and you don't know if it works. But the thing is, if you start creating it and designing it up front based on assumptions, then it will certainly not beat evolution. That's actually what you see in reality. Then you get stuck in all these ideas. And what sort of the classical phrase for that is predict and control. I predict the future, and then of course I have to control reality so that it actually matches with my future. And then you get all these stuck companies that have to stick to their predicted future. And that's why you choose evolution. But it's very important, of course, that evolution happens very speedy. That's the key here. So it's not about evolution and then saying, okay, we'll try this for a year, and if it doesn't work, we're all doomed. It's about trying it, and then if after 2 weeks there's proof it doesn't work, then you can propose something else. That's how it goes, just evolution all the time. There was a question in the middle here. Final one, then we move on, yeah?
So with your example of the 3 circles and merging them, how do you find the happy place between going through the pains of the change versus understanding it's actually improving the system?
The first thing, the pains, I can only comment separately because I don't know if they're always together. So the pains, you have to make them cheap. This is the whole key of this system also, to make change cheap. So people are in our company already very much used to having about 10 roles each. So the roles are smaller, so that already makes it cheaper to change things. You drop a role, it's just maybe 10% of your work. That's one aspect of that. So change has to be cheap. People have to get used to it. And if you're doing this for a while, you will get used to it. And then it's like, okay, we just create a new circle, we know how we do that. We copy paste some stuff, circle is created. So there's a bit of overhead, but you may have to make sure it's cheap. And then the pain is not so big. And this is of course the whole point, right? Why you want a system like this, you want change to be the default. So it has to be cheap. And then the second thing is something you will just sort of feel. It sounds a bit soft, but if you are conscious about metrics and projects and tasks each week, then you can see it. And also, this is all written down. So the original tension, the idea that triggered the improvement is still somewhere else, somewhere as well, written down. So you could revisit that, read it, and maybe next week or in 2 or 3 weeks, check it out and say, this idea, the accountability we created here, it really doesn't work because, here's the example, and change it again. That's sort of how it goes. Okay, so creationism. Nice one to kill anyone who says they know best. You're a creationist. Let's evolve. Another tough one to stay positive in hard times. And what I did for that was also a realization I had. At first we said, let's experiment with Holacracy, which is I think what all of you would like to do maybe. Like, let's see if it works. And what happens is that maybe half or a third of your company will disagree. They will, for some reason, just not like the system. Maybe before trying, maybe afterwards, they will just not like it. And what happened was that they started to, put sand in the engine, be pissed at meetings, not really participate, or sort of purposefully cross the rules, stuff like that. Very annoying stuff. Really sabotaging it. And when I said, okay, you know what, guys? This system is pretty cool. We haven't figured it all out yet. It's not perfect, but we know that we can change the system, so it's fixed. So hereby, we will never change this system anymore. We'll just use this to change itself. So stop whining about it. This is it. Holacracy stays, and maybe a few years down the road something better happens, whatever. But we can change this system already. So stop whining. We will do it like this. So if you don't like it, you can change it within the process of the system. And that's when things really started to speed up. Also when people start to become more positive, because there was less room to just bitch about the system without actually trying to improve it. So these OKRs we've added, and there's a ton of stuff that we've added, small things, to clarify accountabilities or to make the process fit Springest more. All those little things improved it, and if people are able to just bitch about it and not fix it, because they can say the system itself is broken, the operating system is broken, they don't have to think about the apps you're running, about what you're actually doing. That was a key for us, to just say, okay, this is it, want to fix it, you fix it in the system, okay? And some people left, some people were asked to leave, most left though, and it wasn't all because of Holacracy. It's a big topic, of course, people leaving. You read about Zappos maybe, but it's more that Holacracy made it visible that they were not in the right place. They were unhappy, they weren't performing, they wanted to do other things, and that became much clearer, much more transparent, much more on the top because of Holacracy. And then they felt they had to leave, which was fine. That did happen. Okay, some myths. And then we can move on to the Q&A, but just want to call a few of them. I always like the furry dinosaurs, right? It's just like, oh yeah, there's a misconception maybe. And also ties in with the creationist stuff, of course. Maybe you've heard some of them. All of the things I'm about to say, or all of the things on the slides, they're not true. So remember that. First one is the hardest. It is hierarchical. Maybe you've already felt it in how I describe it. It's not free for all, it's not flat. It's flatter than a traditional hierarchy maybe. It's not that if you just do what I say, your career will be fine, which is normal. That's very hierarchical. But in Holacracy you also have a circle. And the circle might have a super circle above that. And the circle has to adhere to the strategy that is set by the super circle. This is one of the hierarchical links. The lead link can ask someone to fulfill a role. This is a hierarchy in a way. But it's different because the potential role holder has to accept or not. He or she can also say, no, I don't have time for that role, I don't like it, I don't think I can do it, whatever. So there are a lot of hierarchical structures in it, but the structure of hierarchy is not people, not I am your boss and you listen to what I say. That's not the structure. The structure is, you listen to the strategy above it. The role's purpose inherits the purpose of the circle. Because there is a link between that, because we want to go to one goal. So it's actually very hierarchical. And for the question, the book that Brian Robertson, the guy who sort of evolved or discovered Holacracy, as he likes to say, in the UK they put this on the cover. And it's very weird because actually there is hierarchy. It's a bit of a misunderstanding. But what most people think hierarchy is, yeah, indeed, you don't have that in Holacracy. But there is a certain hierarchy. Question?
What happens to a potential role holder that doesn't accept a role that management or the super lead circle asks them to take?
Yeah.
For like say 20 times. Because most people do things management asks them for when they don't want to because they fear.
Yeah.
So how do you get rid of fear?
Actually, because everybody has to adhere to the same rules, it slowly dissolves. So in the beginning there will be a bit more of it, or maybe mistrust or something like that, but literally if I ask you to fulfill a role and you say no, by default then I have that role as lead, and then I have to solve that resource problem. it's a resource problem. We need more resources because of this role. Or I just have to do it myself. And that mechanism alone is already enough to take away the fear of not accepting a role, if that was your example. So I have to say, in practice, this doesn't happen. What happens is a discussion about what is the role, how much time do you think it needs, and is it important right now? And almost always people take the role and then see what happens. They will very often have to learn some new skill, so they go to the former role holder or someone else. They very often have to re-juggle their priorities based on the strategy. So they will review all their roles and their projects and see, hey, based on where we want to go as a circle, or maybe as a company, I think this role is indeed very important. Or actually, happens a lot as well, this role is, I get it, it has to be done every now and then, just so shit doesn't hit the fan, but I'll be fine. I'll just wait until some shit hits the fan and then I can fix it. And this happens a lot. And that's a very interesting mechanism. Stuff starts to become very reality-based because it's also visible. I hope that answers the question because it's a bit off the...
I don't believe that Holacracy solves the free rider problem, so I'd be interested to see how probably come to Amsterdam and help you.
Yeah, I like that. That's the only thing I can offer, of course. Because I cannot convince you that it's right or wrong.
Exactly.
You will have to see for yourself. And it doesn't solve it right away. I don't think it solves anything in itself. But by using it, you start to get used to something. The system is not the solution. The system makes people so that people are the solution in the end. Question or? Yeah?
Yeah, more question. What happens to people who leave the company for whatever reason? I'm not sure if you know about it, but like when they then join another company that is hierarchical in a traditional sense, like.
Yeah, good question. Nice. So we have a pretty good bond with everybody who left the company, whether they were asked to or did themselves. That's first. Not everybody will love us or me. I can also be a hard guy because I'm a founder and I want to achieve results. So it's not all hippie happiness, but all of them say like, wow. Okay, guys, I'm now at this other startup, or worse, I'm at this corporate, and sure, I do miss those meetings in Holacracy, because they're so nice and short, and now I'm in this mess, or actually, yeah, nobody knows what everybody's doing here, and all those kind of comments. And it's easy to say that, of course, I can make it up, but that's basically what they say. We also have a regular weekly meeting, actually, where people can just put anything on the agenda and talk about something. It's an hour, we call it the Friday town hall meeting. Sometimes they demo a project they did, or they show something they've learned, or I might share some financial numbers with everybody. And sometimes we have a former employee come in and explain what the real world is like. And they say, well, it's like this actually, how you have this meeting? Well, it takes 2 hours with us. Stuff like that. So it's usually a sort of a reality check. But then they also very quickly adopt. This is what people do, maybe also to your question, People are very adaptable. That's what we've learned. That's, we're monkeys, we will adapt to the environment. And so they move on. Final one for this slide, yeah?
What do you do about people who come in with specific skills or specific knowledge, like to a task, and then you said, well, everyone sort of has 10 roles and it's all very flexible, but you're hiring someone because of their specific knowledge.
Yeah, that happens a lot. So very often people come in for 1 or 2 specific roles. You have to understand that a role is really smaller than a job usually. So it's very often that a role is split up in, let's say a former job is split up in 3 or 4 roles already. Small example, people that come in as developers often get a role in the product circle as a developer. And then in the development circle, that's more for the architecture and the speed of the platform and the code quality, they will have a programmer role there as well. Funny enough, developer programmer just happened to exist like that, where they do code reviews, for instance. And then they might also have an extra accountability to monitor the test suite speed, or to monitor a part of the infrastructure. They have a role that's sort of we call it rotating for exception duty, as we say, and pager duty. And there's always some small roles that people get when they start to sort of roll into the company. And it goes slowly. Sometimes you begin with 1 or 2, and then you evolve and you get a bit more and you can handle it. But I think in general, we can say that if you look at companies, how they are developing, most roles or jobs are demanding more generalist approaches because stuff changes all the time. So if you are very specialized, the chance is smaller that the company has use for you at some point. So I think the world is going towards more journalists that can adapt and do other roles as well. Hope that answers it. I can cry if I want to. Everybody just does whatever the hell they want. No, that's also definitely not the case, because you have to adhere to a strategy. You have to report on metrics. If someone asks you a question about it, you have to answer it. So there's a lot of checks and balances. So you cannot just choose anything. You have to choose according to your accountabilities, your purpose, the purpose above that, the current strategy, all kinds of things. So no, it's not free for all. There's no place for emotion, for humanness, or for women even. I've had that question a lot, interestingly. It's not just a joke or something. Like often after these talks, people would come up to me and say, I like it, but it's very strict and rules and metrics, and it's also robotic, and can women actually do that? The first few times I thought, hey, what's this? So I'm not sort of super sure on how I should answer that, but I can say that because of all the structure, there's a lot more safety. It is never about the loudest person in the room. It's never about, someone talking all the time and the others just waiting for their turn. No, there's a lot of structure there. There's always a box where when your time comes. And also for a certain emotion or whatever. Every meeting also starts with a check-in. And that's mostly about you as a human. So your emotion at that time. I'm checking in. I feel shitty, I'm tired, or whatever, my cat died, or something more serious that happens as well. But now I will join this meeting within my roles. But now you at least know how I as a person joined this. So there are actually a lot of things in the system to provide the safety for emotions or feelings or whatever. Male or female, that's not what it's about. So I feel it's actually better for that, even though it might feel robotic. I'll get back to this structure versus freedom later, but I feel that there's more space for this. You don't have to fire all the managers right away. Ask people for roles, decides on resources. So there are some very important things there that a lead link does, and you can compare that to management. But it's only a small portion of what normal managers do. So you don't have to fire all the managers, but you will have to find new roles for them, and hopefully they actually do stuff besides managing. I know many of you will feel, I don't need a manager to tell me what to do or how to do it. No, but if they do that, then they are filling their day with bullshit, of course. So they have to find some stuff to do. Agree with that? So management, maybe you've heard of Medium actually. Who knows Medium? Hands? Right, you know that they did Holacracy, and they just dropped it. So it's a bit unclear why, although Andy, I forgot his last name, wrote a really good article on why they did it. But then you really want to ask, so what happened actually, when, why, etc. And one of the things I heard was that lead links were very important in their system. It was really a job to look up to, and maybe even something you really did all week. And then when people in my company heard that, it was like, lead link is actually a very small role. You do it next to your other work. Every now and then you have to really clarify something, and maybe add a metric to the circle. And that's basically it. And when the role changes, you have to ask someone else to do a role. It's such a small job. So something went wrong there. Or actually very different from us. But we think lead linking or managing is a very small role. Yeah.
Could it have to do with ego, you'd say?
Sure, but pure speculation here.
Okay,
I don't know. What they actually said themselves was that it's hard for hiring. They wanted to hire people who can scale companies, and they are used to the other structures, and we cannot get them inside our company if their job is so small. So if we need to hire bosses for scaling, because they know how to scale. And that all felt very weird to us when we read that, so it felt like they weren't on the adoption, they never really got there. That's my opinion. I haven't talked to anyone there. I did write an article about it if you're curious. So the management stuff, you'll have to deal with it. You are not really doing self-organization if you're doing only the part of your organization, Or don't tell the CEO. That really happens a lot. I know, I get it. It's fine. It's good to experiment with it, but it's not self-organization because you're not actually choosing your own direction if above you or above your team they're still saying, you know, go there and do it like this. That won't really work. It's good to test it, so sure, do it and try, but don't expect it to feel like real self-organization, like real purpose-driven work. You know, don't expect people to actually have intrinsic motivation then, because there's always this boss above the boss, you know, that will not feel like that. And then it's tough, it won't work. So if you want to try it, the best to do it vertically, all the way from the CEO to whatever bottom layer you have, and say this part of the business is really self-managed, and then we have some other parts that might not be. Better to do it vertically than horizontally or in a group or something. It's very hard to do this. Yeah, it will kill our startup culture. I love this cool stuff. It's like, it's awesome. I love it. If someone has fun, especially the diversity committee, I think. Perfect coloring and stuff. Yeah, it's great. So no, it won't kill the startup culture. That's there. If it does, then you did it yourself. You know, Holacracy will add some rules to actually guard that culture. And yes, the meetings might feel a bit, you know, more tense because you're actually focusing on the work. But yeah, outside of the meeting, you know, there you can be free, or you can have a separate meeting. This really didn't happen with us. Question back?
Yeah. Do you believe that this could be applied to big corporate? And if so, we should give the reason why a big corporate would decide to go for a long deal.
Two good questions. So the first answer to the second question, why would a big corporation do something like this, is I would say, well, first of all, they don't have to, of course. They're doing fine, except when they are not. You know, look at Kodak, look at Nokia, look at Volkswagen, look at all the banks out there. They're all not so doing fine, you know, and they're big, so they will survive for a while. But at some point, they'll have issues. So usually that's a reason to do it. Like,
which issues do you think?
Sorry?
Which issue do you think that will make them change somehow?
Because they're being surpassed by other companies, sort of captured by technology, made obsolete by other technologies because they couldn't adapt. You know, we'll have to see what happens to Volkswagen when Tesla gets its way. And no, that will not be in 5 years, but maybe in 10 or 20. Pretty much all the banks are laying off a lot of people because most of what those people did should be done by computers. You know, and if they don't adapt to that, then they will die. And most of them actually believe that. So if the question is, why would a big corporation do this? Because of fear of dying. You know, there's all kinds of cliches about how many of the Fortune 500 companies exist more than 50 years. It's really a small portion. Most of them die again because they don't adapt. That's a big problem. And then the first question is, can you do this? And I have to say, I don't know. We're at the beginning, you know. It might start small, and Zeppos is having a hard time adopting this because they're with 1,500 or by now maybe even more people. And we'll have to figure it out. We're still at the beginning. And I don't see a reason why not. I know ING Bank in the Netherlands, pretty big corporation, 15,000 employees in the Netherlands only. They're trying sort of a self-management structure in some parts of the organization. I think for a good reason, because they'll have to let a lot of people go in the coming years and change their company. And so they want to try something else, because what they did so far didn't really work. You know, there were a lot of scandals. We had to save those banks with their nice, perfect structure and their perfect management, and we had to buy them out. You know, why? So something wasn't right.
Would you say that it's always purpose-driven? I mean, all the employees have to share the same values in order to make this work?
Nah, I think that's a bit tough. I don't care that much for this super, like, we all care for this purpose, but you know, it has to be a bit of fun to work somewhere. And I think at Springest there are no people working there just because of the money or something like that. I mean, of course we have super low salaries as well, so that forces them to be happy about something else. I don't know. I mean, I think it will sort itself out, and I think it will all take some time. But I think the time is right to at least try some of these new things. In the very back.
Yeah. I know it's not the Q&A, but I felt it was the context. So, my name is Jonathan. I work for Volkswagen.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Were you looking for a job? Or, why are you here?
I'm very happy to be here because this is exactly what a very small group of us are actually trying. It's not Holacracy. It's not Holacracy in itself.
Yeah.
But you know, you don't need to be embarrassed. Like it's cool that you said it. But I think it gave me some context.
Yeah.
My biggest question for you, because I'm listening here, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. You know, we do this in very small groups, and we're trying this out. But our biggest goal is to spin this really back to the complete waterfall model that we've come from. And I, for one, am not a corporate guy. I like wearing suits, but on the weekends. But you know, I really want to know, how can we, from your eyes, how can we spin this back to our waterfall structure and really change this?
I have to spin that back to you and say to you, you will have to evolve that. You know, it might be the case that it doesn't work for your group even, because you don't have the mandate or because you don't have the resources. So it can be a trap as well. You know, they can say, you see, those people were doing this self-management thing, and they are still not super successful. And it might be that they are at fault there, but you know, they might blame you for it. So I don't know. We'll have to figure it out.